sustained this one.
The defendant was being sentenced for aggravated battery with substantial bodily harm. He entered a guilty plea during the hearing after the judge denied bail due to his criminal history. The man leaped over the judge's bench. The judge sustained some injuries, and her condition is still being monitored. A marshal involved in the incident was hospitalized after the attack. The defendant will be back in court today to face 3 new felony charges stemming from the incident.
From thefts and robberies to drug deals in broad daylight, DC's Chinatown is seeing a surge in criminal activity. What impact does it have on local businesses, and do people feel safe? Sam Wong reports. Protesters at California State Capitol disrupted the first session by demanding an immediate ceasefire to the war in Gaza. Lawmakers are trying to tackle the state's budget deficit. David Lamb has more after the break.
70 high-profile figures with ties to the late pedophile financier Jeffrey Epstein. And the Starmer says Labour is ready for the polls and wants the election to hinge on the economy.
Now, we can use this information and we can go dig deep, and hopefully subpoenas will happen. And there is some new information, but honestly, for the most part, there's not a single name that was mentioned that we did not know in 2007 or 2012 or 2019 with the Epstein arrest. So for us in the industry, the names are not new, but it is important that we do now see corroboration of saying, okay, yes, the names are official, and I think probably one of the most critical things that was released is a second witness that is saying, wait a minute, Bill Clinton was on the island. So I think that's a silver lining with the release so far for me, is that we can dig into these relationships and say, okay, let's continue to investigate, and then hopefully subpoena, cross-examine, and prosecute.
Expanding on that, on the note of prosecution, how do we get there? You mentioned subpoenas, but it seems it's not just the clients, right? How do we find out who the buyers are? How do we go about
100%.
that?
That is the only question we should be talking about, because we have a Jeffrey Epstein incarcerated, lost his life, right? We have a Ghislaine Maxwell jailed and incarcerated under sex trafficking, yet we've never seen a single buyer on a witness stand. Not one. That doesn't make sense. You can't say they traffic human beings, but there are no buyers. There is no trafficking without buyers. It's a crime of supply. The demand is so high, there was supply. And that's what the names should lead to. The FBI is sitting, they confiscated Epstein's video. So the names that were just released were names that were given to the FBI predominantly from Maxwell's testimony, Maxwell's trial. Give us the information you had since 2012 on Epstein. Give us the Epstein flight logs. Let's cross-corroborate those, and let's see who's in the videos. And take who's in the videos and cross-collaborate that with the names that are on the flight logs. And then go after those people and say, now we're going to get you into the court of law. We're going to cross-examine you to determine, are you a buyer?
Now, when it comes to sex trafficking, it's more than this high-profile case. You've mentioned on your podcast that many, many children are being targeted in America alone. While this unfolds, what should be done here?
Yeah, and thank you for that question, because I think at this point, America, we focus so much on Epstein, not really understanding what the climate of the crime is. It's a $152 billion industry selling women and children. It is arguably the number one societal problem in our country. And it touches everything else, because crime begets crime. With sex trafficking comes debt bondage, debt labor, and labor trafficking, and money laundering, and illegal, contraband smuggling. It all comes together. But it's proliferated our culture. The average buyer in the United States today 2,000 cases, reported cases of human trafficking, sex trafficking specifically, that we have profiled over the last 2 years. The average buyer is a father of two who earns north of $100,000 a year. That means it's not who people think. It's in their neighborhood. It's in their church. It's in their schools. It's on a social media app. When I sit with people and I take a school auditorium full of kids, high schoolers, and I say, raise your hand if you've had this phrase asked of you in your DMs, right? And the hands go up. But I tell the principal before what that phrase means, right? They go pale. And I say, wait a minute, you want to tell me that 60% of the girls in our school have already been speaking to a predator on social media? They're being profiled? Yes, absolutely, because predators take time. On average, 9 months to desensitize and groom a child before they boldly make a move. This is not kidnapping. Trafficking and kidnapping in the U.S. is 1.7% of the crime. The rest, 25 to 47% of trafficking in the U.S. across the 50 states, 25 to 47% is what's called familial trafficking. It means it's a familial figure to the child, most often a caregiver, a coach, a mom, a dad, an uncle, a trusted individual that at first exploited that child and introduces that child into the world of sex trafficking. So it's local. It should be personal to every American.
And on that note, when it comes to the sex trafficking victims, given your own family history with this topic, how can they begin to get closure?
Massive amount of healing, the right kind of healing. And we offer, look, on our website, helpjbm.org, we provide resources to families how to prevent it in their home, how to spot and identify a potential trafficking victim or a child at risk. But most importantly, the child who has already now gone through abuse. That is a very, very long journey. It's the most difficult work. Rescuing a child is not easy, but the work starts, and on average, it's a 3-to-1. So if a child is trafficked for 2 years, it's going to take 6 years of restoration and therapy and really rebuilding a life. It's a tremendously difficult job to do. We're under-resourced in the country, particularly for minors. So I encourage parents to be proactive. And we, even the shirt I have on underneath says, save a child before they need rescue. Meaning, let's identify the children that are at risk, like the predator is identifying the child that is at risk. Let us identify them. Let us educate them, reinforce it so that they do not get trafficked. But for the ones who have been sexually exploited, sexual abuse, trafficking, rape, that's a rebuilding process that takes time, and it takes particular resources. And we always need more resources, but we have substantial resources to offer to families. And they can reach out to us, and we'll point them in the right direction in any of the 50 states.
While it did not directly mention Trump's name, it did include images showing the January 6th incident with Trump's flag in it. Let's take a look.
There's an extremist movement that does not share the basic beliefs in our democracy. All of us are being asked right now, what will we do to maintain our democracy?
President Biden has called Trump a threat to democracy, and will make that theme of a speech to this Friday in Pennsylvania, a day before the 3rd anniversary of the January 6th incident. Meanwhile, former President Trump has also called Biden a threat to democracy, and Trump will hold Iowa rallies this Saturday. Steve.
So, Iris, as we mentioned at the top, Trump's also facing a new challenge to remove him from the ballot, this time in the state of Illinois. Tell us more about this.
You're right, Steve. So 5 people in Illinois working with a voting rights group today filed a formal objection trying to keep Trump off the ballot in Illinois right there. And they again cited the 14th Amendment, accusing Trump of participating in an insurrection. We all know that Trump's team has maintained that January 6th was not an insurrection and that there's no way that Trump participated in one ever. The similar challenges filed by voters themselves, meanwhile, have failed in both Michigan and Minnesota. So these are not working out in other states, at least for now. And when it comes to the Colorado Supreme Court ruling, which has been playing out for the past 2 weeks, we know that the order is now on hold and pending any action by the U.S. Supreme Court right here in D.C. So unless the High Court acts by tomorrow, Friday, which is when the Colorado primary ballots are to be certified, we do expect to see Trump's name on that ballot right there. Steve.
NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao reporting for us live from the White House. Thank you, Iris. Presidential candidate Chris Christie publishing a new campaign ad saying he has an admission to make. Here's what he says about former President Trump.
I have an admission to make. 8 years ago, when I decided to endorse Donald Trump for president, I did it because he was winning. And I did it because I thought I could make him a better candidate and a better president. Well, I was wrong.
Christie strongly endorsed Trump back in 2016. After dropping out of the race, the former governor defended Trump in various instances. He reportedly also tried to become Trump's running mate, or also was seeking the attorney general position. Now Christie telling voters he made a mistake and that they should not vote for Trump. He says the former president would, quote, sell the soul of this country. Former President Trump's name is back on the Colorado primary ballot, pending 2 appeals to the United States Supreme Court. What might we expect moving forward? To find out, let's bring in Brad Smith, former commissioner at the Federal Election Commission and currently professor of law at Capital University in Columbus, Ohio. Brad Smith, thank you so much for joining.
It's my pleasure.
Do you think that the Colorado Supreme Court and Maine Secretary of State have violated the voting rights of residents in those states?
The democratic values you allude to really ought to inform our discussion. And I think that the Maine Secretary of State, who's not even a lawyer and didn't really have any kind of hearing process, and the Colorado Supreme Court have both taken a path that is very detrimental to our politics, very damaging to long-term political discourse and comedy in the country.
What remedies of law do the voters in Colorado and Maine have to fight against a political candidate, President Trump or anyone else, being barred from the ballot without due process?
Well, the president has raised a number of issues in his appeal to the Supreme Court. They include some technical issues, and by technical I don't mean trivial, but not getting to that substance of did he engage in an insurrection, which is the grounds they're using for keeping him off the ballot. One of those, for example, is that that provision of the 14th Amendment simply does not cover the office of president. And that's actually the basis on which the Colorado trial court first held that Trump could be on the ballot. So those are, like I say, are not trivial. But the bottom line really comes down to how are you going to interpret this idea of engaging in an insurrection? And this was a post-Civil War amendment, and it was to keep old Confederates from coming back into office, being elected by southern states. So, for example, you could take someone like, say, Howell Cobb was a congressman from Georgia. He resigned from Congress, became a general and then served in Jefferson Davis's cabinet. There's no doubt, in one sense, I've given you a description that I think every single person in America would agree constitutes engaging in an insurrection. All right. The problem with the Trump situation is it's highly contested whether what happened on January 6th was an insurrection, whether Trump engaged in it in any way through comments he made. And one of the things that's worth noting is that in all the prosecutions of January 6th rioters or people who entered in the Capitol, they have never charged anybody with insurrection. And so I think what's going to happen is it's going to go to the Supreme Court, and I expect that the Supreme Court will rule that Trump can be on the ballot. There's any number of grounds they could do so, including simply that the term insurrection has to be much more narrowly defined. It has to mean something like what Howell Cobb did, resign from Congress, become a Confederate general. but they might use more technical grounds, such as suggesting that this is something that Congress has to pass legislation before courts can decide it. Congress has to say, what does an insurrection mean? What is the due process requirements to prove an insurrection? So this will go to the Supreme Court, and that's where the decision will be made. And I suspect that on one grounds or another, it will be favorable to President Trump.
How do you see us getting past all of these partisan issues that are oftentimes fueled by one's partisan beliefs and subject to interpretation?
On parts of the right, but we also see it on parts of the left, and we see it in these kind of like legal efforts to keep Trump off the ballot. And there's a lot of talk about breaking norms. We're trying to use the 13th Amendment in this way to keep somebody off the ballot as breaking a norm. And it poses a real danger. I mean, somebody could look at the events in the summer of 2020, those riots, and they could say far more people injured, far more property damage, more people killed. And some of these rioters actually set up areas in Seattle they called the autonomous zone and said they were free from local authorities. So maybe somebody's saying, well, why isn't that an insurrection? And if that's an insurrection, Kamala Harris offered to pay bail for people or help fund a group that offered to pay bail for people who were arrested. So is that providing aid and comfort? And, you can envision local authorities all over the country starting to engage in this warfare. If you keep Trump off, we're going to keep Biden off and that sort of thing in future elections. And the real answer, as much as it's not perhaps very satisfactory, we all need to exercise a little bit of self-restraint, have confidence in our processes, and have confidence in the voters, that they will make a reasonable decision. But right now, you have a lot of people on both sides, and in the particular case, we're talking about people on the left who are just in near hysteria about the prospect that Trump would win another election, and so they're breaking norms to try to prevent him from even being on the ballot.
Brad Smith, really appreciate your insights. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So even as Senate negotiators are trying to work out a bipartisan plan to deal with the border crisis, some Republicans are now trying to use leverage elsewhere to meet their demands, some bluntly saying, shut down the border or shut down the government. This as Congress is coming up on a fast-approaching deadline for funding the government. NTD's congressional correspondent Melina Wisecup reports.
We see a fierce showdown taking shape around funding the government. Up until this point, Ukraine aid has been the main source of leverage that House Republicans have used to make demands for border policy change. But now it's looking like keeping the lights on here in the U.S. government may be dependent upon changes at the border. Congressman Chip Roy of Texas leading the effort.
Ranchers, local law enforcement, local leaders, and they all told me the same thing. Shut down the border or shut down the government. That's it.
If they can't love our country and the citizens enough and respect our laws, then we need to cut off funding. We need to shut the government down.
Lawmakers will return from their trip to Eagle Pass, Texas, here to Congress, facing a fast-approaching January 19th deadline to fund the government to avoid a partial government shutdown. Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson has not directly endorsed the idea of shutting down the government in order to force border policy changes, but he has essentially said that their demands are the only way to directly and effectively address the issue at the border.
H.R. 2 is the necessary ingredient.
H.R. 2 is a bill that the Republican-led House passed several months ago. It would restart construction of the border wall, raise the bar for asylum claims, also return to a Trump-era policy known as Remain in Mexico, all proposals which Senate negotiators say are going nowhere fast.
I can't get a Democratic Senate to be able to agree with that at all, and I can't get a White House to be able to agree with that.
My understanding is that H.R. 2 doesn't have Democratic votes in the House or in the Senate.
The White House says that the solution here is for Congress to give the DHS more money and resources to address the issue. However, Republicans are concerned that that money will only be used to quickly process more illegal immigrants and release them into the country rather than be used to stem the flow. This battle over border policy has once only stalled Ukraine aid, but now the entire U.S. government may be dependent on it. Reporting from Capitol Hill, Melina Wisecup, NTD News.
And coming up, from thefts and robberies to drug deals in broad daylight, Washington, D.C.'s Chinatown is seeing a surge in criminal activity. What impact does it have on local businesses, and are people feeling safe? And a defendant attacks a Nevada judge in court during sentencing. We have the footage and the details of what happened when we return.
Elephants are under threat and need you to protect them. This is Chip, A young calf clinging to his mother after she was brutally shot and killed. Without her, he would have little chance of surviving. This is Chip now. He was taken to an elephant orphanage in Africa that IFAW helps support, where young elephants are given urgent care and a safe place to recover. Your monthly gift today helps animals just like Chip that urgently need to be rescued. Because when it comes to saving elephants, it's you plus IFAW, the International Fund for Animal Welfare. Call or go online right now to join IFAW.org and give $19 a month, only 63 cents a day. You can save elephants and the places they call home. You plus IFAW together can fund rangers to stop poachers in their tracks, protect the land elephants need to roam and survive, and provide loving care for those who have been orphaned so they can one day be released back into the wild. But the only way we can do this life-saving work is with you plus IFAW. So call or go online with your gift right now. With the monthly support of people just like you, elephants are alive and thriving today. It takes years of hard work from dedicated teams so orphaned elephants can learn the skills they need to survive in the wild. So please, call now or go online with your monthly gift. You can help provide the urgent care elephants like Chip need, so this generation won't be the last. And when you use your credit card, you'll get this exclusive membership kit, including your very own IFAW t-shirt to show it's you plus IFAW standing together to help rescue and care for these majestic creatures. The danger for elephants is more urgent than ever before. That's why we need you. It's going to take all of us to help save elephants before they disappear forever. So please, call right away to make your monthly gift or go to joinifaw.org.
Got a new house.
I think I found a place that I call home. Looking for a healthy and smooth-tasting brew? Drop by Days Coffee Roasters today and explore our wide selection of specialty-grade, small-batch roasted coffee. Home to North America's first enzyme-fermented coffee, we source a wide selection of specialty-grade coffee beans from around the world, and our baristas are ready to craft your customized brew. Visit Days Coffee at 28 North Street, Middletown, New York. Come experience a brew like no other.
Welcome back to the Capitol Report. I'm Steve Lance. So as the rise in violent crime continues to haunt the nation's capital, DC's Chinatown has been seeing fewer and fewer pedestrians. Compounding another blow to the neighborhood, two professional sports teams may soon move out of the landmark Capital One Arena to neighboring Virginia. NTD Sam Wong has the details.
This is Chinatown, a historic tourist destination located only about a mile away from Capitol Hill. For visitors, this area is becoming a go-to spot for sports games, museums, and some authentic, delicious Chinese cuisines. But to some residents, Chinatown is merely a reflection of the state of public safety in D.C., where rampant violent crime is becoming a regular phenomenon. From theft and robbery to dealing drugs in broad daylight, a once flourishing Chinatown is seeing a surge in criminal activity. According to D.C. police, in 2023, violent crime in the area was up a staggering 36% compared to the previous year. For Chinatown stakeholders, safety is their top priority, especially once they began seeing more panhandling and homelessness in the neighborhood. And since the COVID-19 pandemic, small businesses in Chinatown have been dealt a major blow as the area now sees fewer people walking by. And it's not just small businesses that are hurting. Monumental Sports recently announced its plans to move to Northern Virginia, relocating two major sports teams out of the landmark Capital One Arena. Some are wondering whether that's partially due to safety concerns. So do people feel safe when they come to see a game? NTD spoke with some of them, and here's what they said.
It's about safety. These players need it the most.
Definitely, you can see it's getting a little bit more dangerous around here.
I grew up in New York City, so this is a piece of cake.
Every cop that works out here, they want to be out here serving their community. And if DC supports their law enforcement, you'll get quality out of it.
To tackle the rise in violent crime, DC Mayor Muriel Bowser last October spearheaded legislation targeting retail theft and drug dealing. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Sam Wong, NTD News.
A child was killed and 5 others injured in a shooting at an Iowa high school earlier this morning. The shooters confirmed dead from an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound. First reports about an active shooter at Perry High School came at around 7:40 a.m. local time. That was before school started, and it was the first day of school following winter break. The school is located about 25 miles northwest of Des Moines. Police identified the shooter as 17-year-old Dylan Butler, a student at the school. The victim killed was a 6th grade middle school student.
Out of our taxes, but if that money dries up, I mean, it needs to come out of the state. And the problem they're having with that is, the states are running out of money too. So frankly, I don't know what California's thinking right now on a personal level. Maybe they got a plan, they're just not communicating it very well. $68 billion in debt. Maybe they think if they drive it far enough, it'll reset to zero, like the speedometer, like the mileage in your car. You max it out and it just goes back to. Maybe they think debt works that way. I don't know. It's California, folks. Speaking of which, Epic Times says that some hospitals in Southern California are struggling with an influx of illegal immigrants amid the border crisis. No kidding, right? It says while American patients are enduring longer wait times for doctor appointments due to a nursing shortage in the state, according to 2 healthcare professionals. It says a healthcare worker at a hospital in Southern California, who asked to not be named for fear of losing her job, told the Epic Times that the entire healthcare system is just being bombarded by a steady stream of illegal migrants in recent years who we presume don't feel like paying. And she said that, they're falling off the wall. They're always being flown. In other words, they're being life flighted to these American hospitals. She said they're never put in the back of an ambulance, with a typical helicopter rescue costing about $30,000 without factoring in the cost of medication and medical staff in the hospital. She questioned, who pays for that? Well, the answer is clear. American taxpayers pay for that. Now, they said as well that our healthcare system is so overwhelmed, and then add on top of that tuberculosis, COVID-19, and other diseases from all over the world. And you're looking at the problem that America is facing right now as we provide free healthcare to illegal aliens. Now, that being said, there was an update on this as well. You might have seen that in Texas, they're actually starting to enforce the laws that the federal government just plain old doesn't feel like enforcing. Namely, there's many laws they don't feel like enforcing, like, basic crime laws, but in particular about illegally entering the United States, as the country is being flooded with hundreds of thousands of illegal aliens every single month, and Americans are paying the bill for their housing and food and medical costs and whatever else they need. You have now Texas that has made it a crime to illegally enter Texas from another country. Normally, of course, border security is one of the few traditional responsibilities of the federal government, and the federal government is no longer fulfilling its basic responsibilities on that. Instead, they are facilitating the mass migration, working in cahoots with the United Nations into the United States. And interestingly, after what happened in Texas, Texas is like, well, we're going to enforce the laws, you will not. What happens? The Biden administration is now suing Texas. The Biden administration is suing Texas for enforcing border laws. You getting that? They're trying to make Texas tear down, barriers, cut barbed wire, and so on, and to not deport people. Because as Texas is now making it a crime to illegally enter the state from another country, they're making it so that, if you're arrested once, you get sent back. If you enter again, you can be charged with a crime. The Biden administration is suing them for that. And, again, I personally think that's probably going to go to the Supreme Court. I don't think it's going to hold up on the federal end of the Supreme Court. I think Texas has the higher ground legally on this. And it's probably going to bring up a lot of other issues, such as our delinquent government not fulfilling its basic responsibilities. After the break, I'll be talking about the true cost on the healthcare system. And folks, the number is going to shock you.